Hi, I'm Martin Bailey from Global Graphics, and today I'd like to give you a very high-level view of the features of Harlequin RIPs for digital labels and packaging. Let's start with the basics. What do you really need in a RIP to drive a digital press for labels or packaging? Well, it's got to render your jobs correctly, of course, so you'll be glad to know that HP Indigo have trusted Harlequin to deliver high-quality output for over a decade. And it has to drive your press at engine speed, otherwise you can't achieve the return on investment that you're looking for. That's pretty easy if you're still printing 5,000 copies of each label or carton. But as your run lengths get shorter and shorter, and as you handle more and more variable data, it gets harder. So again, you'll be glad to know that Harlequin is being used to drive variable data jobs at 650 square meters per minute on HP inkjet web presses. I think that counts as a pass. Okay, so what about color? Maybe you're building your first digital press now with CMYK inks, but you're planning to add orange and green in a year, and you know you want to expand into other sectors like textiles later, so you don't want to be locked out of light cyan, light green, etc. And your customers want to match jobs run on conventional presses. And of course you want to squeeze as high a quality as you can out of the print engine itself, whether you're using binary or grayscale heads. So what can Harlequin do about all of those? Harlequin includes a full color management solution, developed continuously for over 20 years in response to real customer needs. It allows you to chain multiple transforms using ICC profiles together to achieve whatever emulation and other effects you require. And it'll support pretty much any process color space on the output side. Being able to separate different functions of color management into individual profiles means that a press vendor can allow printing companies and converters to make their own output color profiles for new substrates, while ensuring that ink limiting is always applied safely, for instance. I'll count that as a pass mark. And Harlequin has good support for spot colors too. But I don't think you can treat all spots as the same. Let's break them into three categories: brand colors, special inks, and technical separations. Before we move on, I'll set your mind to rest about one thing. Harlequin doesn't really have any practical limit to the number of spot colors you can use in any one job. It can handle up to 8,000. Feel free to take that as a challenge. Brand colors must be printed as accurately as possible, even though they usually be rendered with a build of process inks on a digital press. That requirement still applies when they're involved in overprints or live PDF transparency. And it should be possible to tune the representation of a specific brand color, either directly in ink values such as CMYK, or in a device-independent space such as LAB or XYZ, so the output profile can take care of media variations. If you're emulating an offset or flexo press, that emulation shouldn't usually be applied to the brand colors because you don't want to limit the accessible color gamut, but they should be constrained by ink limiting to avoid over-inking. That means you need control over where in the process the emulated brand colors are merged with the process ones. And yes, Harlequin does all of that and more. We're racking up the pass marks here. Next, on to special inks such as white, varnish, metallics, fluorescents, invisible inks, texture effects, conductive inks, and everything else that press and ink vendors are bringing out to increase shelf appeal, support anti-counterfeit measures, for functional purposes, etc. These are usually real inks on press, so the RIP just needs to produce separations for them. But there are some cases where the PDF uses a gold spot color, for instance, and you want to automatically use a build of silver, yellow, and a touch of black to emulate that. Or where you're achieving metallic effects without metallic inks by printing on a pre-coated substrate and masking that out with a white ink. Or many other use cases that you can come up with. And occasionally you also need special overprint controls to ensure that a filled background isn't knocked out by other graphics placed over the top. You guessed it, Harlequin does all of this. But you've also added a whole bunch of extra marks for cut and fold lines, glue indicators, etc. Sometimes you want to print those along with the real graphics for proofing. Sometimes you want to print only the technical separations for lead-in, for instance, and sometimes you want to omit them completely for the actual print run. And when somebody upstream forgot to set them to overprint, because that never happens, right? You don't want a white line in the real graphics where an omitted cut line has knocked them out. Sometimes you also need to extract technical separations in vector form so that you can use them to drive a cutter. Yes, one small set of requirements where Harlequin does everything you need. In fact, two more. Harlequin can do all of this either via controls on spot colors or by managing layers, or optional content to use the terminology from the PDF standard. Sometimes managing layers is more flexible than controlling technical separations. For example, when you're enabling or disabling legends that are not constrained to print in specified spot colors, or because the layers are being used for versioning for different languages, etc. within the same PDF file. And all of this is in Harlequin as well. I hope I've been able to give you a very quick insight into how Harlequin can address all your requirements for a front end for a label or packaging press. We certainly racked up enough pass marks on the way through to score an easy A+. Now, how can we help you?